everyone. So I'll start by saying a little bit about me, my interests, where we've built our business and how this fits in. I think this fits in quite neatly with the financial development goal to protect consumers from harm. So Switchfoot, it's funny hearing it described as an organisation. It's 3 separate companies and it's 2 people. It's me and my wife. My wife's an accountant and she runs Switchfoot Accounting, and it's a zero specialist, technologically led accountancy firm. I run Switchfoot Wealth. I'm a chartered financial planner, independent, doing financial planning and that kind of things. And then between us, we created a company last year called Switchfoot Teams, which is now a Solar affiliate. So that's quite nice. And Switchfoot Teams is an app for attorneys and court-appointed deputies. And it is really just taking best practice ideas from technology that we use in financial planning and in the world of accountancy and saying, this could help vulnerable clients, this could help attorneys. So I'm going to talk a lot about attorneyships and court-appointed deputyship orders, court protection deputyship orders, and I suppose where we're coming from. My wife's an experienced chartered accountant. The technology piece is important in this because the integration of open banking and automation that is happening and is revolutionising the accountancy profession. I think they have seen a massive impact that we as financial planners are starting to see from open banking, but there's a lot more to that to go. The legal profession is probably several years behind where even we are, probably a decade behind where the accountants are. So there's an opportunity to sort of do better. My niche, if I have one, is working with professionals. So because I live with and married to an accountant, and I'm also, it says on there I'm a STEP affiliate member. I've finished my STEP diploma. The results are due out mid-January, so I was kind of hoping that I could put my TEP up there. But that's in advising vulnerable clients. So I checked with the CLTI who organised the course, and according to them, there are only 2 other financial advisors or financial planners who've ever done that qualification. There's probably around 200 people. It's only been running for this is the 5th year, 30 to 40 people a year. Annoyingly, there's 2 of us on the course this year, so I'll be one of 4 in that. When we're talking LPAs, we're talking about vulnerable clients, and that's a very hot topic for the FCA at the moment. And they have actually, I think, a very good definition of what a vulnerable client is. It's anyone who might be at risk of detriment because of their circumstances. It could be something as simple as dyslexia, colour blindness even. I had one client, I was giving him a chance, I didn't bother to ask whether he could see them. I was putting them in red and brown and he couldn't tell the difference between the lines. What was I explaining? So working with and around vulnerabilities is really important. I'm going to be talking about a problem that I see on the horizon, but I'm also hopefully going to be putting in a solution and something to think about. So this is stating the obvious, isn't it? We've got an ageing population, and that is going to have an effect on policy. The FCA said it. So, what are lasting powers of attorney versus deputyships? So, lasting powers of attorney, if you lose, and I'm talking here all about property and affairs, health and welfare, very important, somebody else's issue to talk about. So property and affairs, as a financial planner, that sits right in our sphere of influence, doesn't it? I think on almost every fact find I've ever come across or considered using, there's a little box on it that says, do you have a lasting power of attorney? And there might be even a space where you can write who the appointed attorneys are. and that's it. And that level of questioning, I think, is very common across our industry, and I think it needs to be a little bit deeper and a little bit more involved, because I don't think that's enough. Have you got power of attorney? Yes. Have you got power of attorney? No. I think you should go and get one. Is that as much as we want to say on the subject? I want to make the case that we should be saying a bit more and educating our clients about powers of attorney. So LPAs are pretty cheap to get. You can go online and do it, or you can get somebody to professionally draft it for you. So it's administratively quite simple, relatively low cost, largely unsupervised. It's up to you if you've got capacity to choose who your attorneys are. And then, in reality, probably nobody's going to bother to look at that arrangement ever again. So reported rates of financial abuse are low, but rising rapidly. But I think it is just the tip of the iceberg, because this all happens behind closed doors, within families, and it just doesn't get reported. There's all sorts of trade-offs that go online, and people accept a level of misuse of their funds. In theory, the OPG, the Office of the Public Guardian, has oversight on them, but only if concerns are raised to them. How can you raise concerns if there is no transparency over the financial affairs once the LPA has been set up? On the flip side, if you haven't pre-planned and you do lose capacity, somebody needs to apply to the Court of Protection for a judicial order. That is administratively very complex. We often describe it as a crushing administrative burden on the deputy. They often get professional help with that. It's quite expensive. There are huge delays built into the system, because what we think of as humans as urgent, the courts say, yeah, there's another X thousand people in an even worse situation. We'll get round to you in 3 months. So they have huge issues, but once they're set up, they're quite protective. There's the deputyship bond, which is there to protect the subject of the power, the donor, if you like. And there's the annual deputy returns. You have to provide a very comprehensive statement to the OPG every single year about how you've used the finances, and they can go into a good level of detail. So there are some things that are really good about both sides, but I think at the moment consumers have pretty poor choices. An LPA that's quite easy to abuse, or a deputyship that's protective but administratively very, very burdensome. So what we're trying to do is give clients better choices on that. It's not just me that thinks LPAs are easy to abuse. That was a quote that hit the press in 2017, and the person that said, "I would never write an LPA," was a senior Court of Protection judge. So that was, at that point, former senior Court of Protection judge, Denzel Bush, who is also a patron of Action on Elder Abuse. And he said, "I would never sign a power of attorney." And obviously he's seen the worst end of it in the rulings he's made. There are undoubtedly a huge number of these that are run very successfully, very well, never hit the news, but there is nonetheless a problem with the documents. And that problem's about to get a lot worse. Age 83, does that mean anything to anyone? Don't expect it to. Age 83, from a vulnerability point of view, is quite an important number. Below age 75, cognitive impairment is pretty rare. It does happen, but it's pretty rare. The statistical likelihood of cognitive impairment increases between 75 and age 83, and at age 83 onwards, it's actually quite likely, or at least the situation can change quite quickly for individuals who are fine one day and have quite a problem, pretty soon afterwards. We've got an ageing population. The FCA's already said that for us, but we're not having an ageing population in good health. We've got increased morbidity, and at age 83, statistically, you're more likely than not to have multi-morbidity, multiple health issues affecting and compounding. And you think about our clients, the 83-year-olds, they do tend to have a basket of pills pills, with all sorts of different medications. The dates I've put on there is all about pensions freedom. So pensions freedom drawdown came in 2015, and we have seen a huge liberalisation in access to funds, but what we haven't seen commensurate with that is a step up in the level of protection in terms of the legal documents. So the dates on there are, 2015 it was released. I'm thinking about a particular cohort. If we imagine them age 65 when they access their pensions freedoms in 2015, they're now 70. By 2024, they're going to be 75. Between 2024 and 2032, they're going to be increasingly vulnerable. Statistically, not all of them. An increasing proportion of them are going to be dealing with vulnerabilities in pension plans that are entirely accessible, and handing over control of those pension plans to entirely unsupervised lasting powers of attorney. And I think that's a huge potential scandal to break. I've sort of done the fire triangle. What's the risk of financial abuse? If you put vulnerability next to unsupervised power, with nobody checking up on it, no financial transparency at all, and then making pension pot hugely accessible, that represents a huge amount of risk. So in the past, if somebody was abusing a power of attorney to steal somebody's pension, it's probably annuity income they were making. Comes to light, put a stop to it, that individual still has their annuity income to carry on living off of. Going forwards, they're going to have their entire pension pot and all their future income things as well. And that's going to have, I think, some pretty, it's going to have certainly very profound consequences for them. The ideas have all come out of practice and conversations with my clients. So I'm a later life specialist, I'm a solo member, I've done the step advising on the clients course, I've always looked after elderly clients. And if you actually have conversations with them, it's frightening how many of them have been exposed to some sort of scam or financial abuse. And I categorise them in three different sort of categories. Remote impersonal, it's phone, email, that kind of stuff. I've put insurance providers up on that list. I think just increasing premiums is, I would say, an active choice to exploit vulnerable consumers. It's just utterly wrong. I don't think the regulators be anywhere near hard enough on that. Unnecessary services, the sale of unnecessary service. Then you've got a little bit more sinister still.
What's chugging?
Charity mugging.
Oh, right.
I'm thinking there was a famous case of the poppy seller. It's a terrible term.
Apparently that was true.
Terrible term. Well,
yes.
There's certainly, it's been a huge reputational issue for charities, how they raise funds, particularly with vulnerable clients. So whether it's true or not, it's caused a hell of a problem for that sector. Then we've got remote personal. So this is going to be stuff like possibly pension scams. It's going to be boiler room scams. It's going to be people phoning up, making contact, but they're not there in the house with them, but they're starting to build a relationship. So you get elements of coercive control, loneliness, social isolation, all kind of feeds into this. And then you've got personal. That's the really difficult one often when it happens within families. Nobody likes to think that, but it does happen. We can see from the court cases. At the Solicitors for the Elderly annual conference last year, there were a couple of presenters who I think made some really, really interesting points. So one of them was Kathleen O'Hara, who's an American psychoanalyst. I'm sure I've got much time for psychoanalysis, but she talked about a model of combating financial abuse, which is picking up a huge amount of intellectual credibility in the States, and that's called upstandership, which has been sort of created and popularised by somebody called Philip Marshall, who was talking about the financial abuse of his grandmother. President Obama was talking about it. It's a model well worth looking up. There are a few points in there that are particularly relevant as far as I'm concerned. Attention, awareness, knowledge, and responsibility, the ability to respond. That to me is all about transparency. That's all to me about being able to see that something is going wrong, identify it, and then be in a position to do something about it. And Caroline Blanska, she's one of the original founders of Solicitors for the Elderly. She now lectures and trains the legal profession, wrote the STEP course. She put there, her quote on there, the OPG is very keen on nudge theory, which is this psychological theory of making changes in line with human behaviour, how humans naturally react. And I've pulled out a bit of her quote there. If nudge theory were applied to lasting powers of attorney, nearly all attorneys would make legally compliant decisions. She thinks there's a solution out there. It's just not being implemented. The good thing is, the power of attorney document is a very flexible document that you can insert lots of clauses into. So we think, well, what practically, what are the nudges, what are the things that we can do with these documents that can be protective for people going forwards and mitigate that risk? At point of creation, so this is nudge one, is all about having a safeguarding strategy. So that needs to be put in place when you're writing the document and physically written into the lasting power of attorney document itself. It then needs to be put into use and actually applied, and some sort of mechanism for doing that. And then at point of safeguarding, this seems to be a peculiar concern of the legal profession. You get very tied up over professional privilege and client confidentiality. They feel like I'm seeing abuse happening, and I don't feel like I can tell anyone because it's private and confidential. Actually, they can. They almost have a duty too, but it seems to be a very big dilemma. So Action on Elder Abuse have got a form that they ask solicitors to get the clients to sign when they're doing these sorts of things, saying we are pre-authorised to raise safeguarding concerns with appropriate public bodies, police, NHS, whoever it is. The next nudge is, okay, we've done all of that. It's very, very important to spot the micro signs of abuse, or as Caroline Blanska says, if you ever see her speaking, draw a distinction between misuse and abuse. So misuse of a power is just getting it wrong. It's not deliberately doing something evil. It can grow into that over time. And the Mental Capacity Act almost leads you down the path on this one. It says, take account of what the P in the term, take account of P's wishes. Mum would definitely want to bail me out of my gown today. She wouldn't want to see me get my knees broken by the loan shark. She's always done it in the past. It would be her wish. Oh, the legislation says I should take account of her wishes. Mum's going to bail me out. That's kind of misuse. They're not deliberately being evil. It's a weird family dynamic, but it's probably a true one. Abuse is deliberately, yeah, I'm buying myself a house and a car. I don't care about you. It rarely starts with I'm transferring 100 grand. It's often very small misuses that add up over time. And actually with professional oversight, if you've got the ability with transparency, AI and automation to spot where things aren't quite correct and have a conversation and bring it out into the open, oh, shouldn't really be doing it like that. Oh, what were you trying to do? I see. Let's formalise this arrangement. Let's bring it out into the open. Let's stop it developing into something worse. And that then leads on to, well, actually, there's a case that the legal community needs to start delivering ongoing services to attorneys and not seeing it as a transaction. We kind of understand ongoing services, but I think there's a huge value in that, and I think there's a huge role for the financial services profession to help train them how to deliver an ongoing service, which my technology helps with as well. That's kind of the point of it. So what practically can we do? Well, the first thing is we can put safeguarding clauses into the documents themselves. SFE, Solicitors for the Elderly, STEP, they all produce sort of template wordings that can drop into these documents. But at the moment they say things like, get an accountant to check it once a year. I'm kind of thinking, you're not going to spot the microsigns like that. You're not going to, you're not really going to help your client that much if they've had all their money stolen for the last year. You're unlikely to be able to recover it. So I think technology such as open banking, bringing that information together into one place, pulling out, producing a set of accounts, analysing it against what we expected to go through, being automatically alerted when things are different between the actual and the budget expenditure in different areas. Technology and the power of AI, or AI, artificial intelligence, at least intelligent assistance, so systems automatically sorting the data for us can help us spot these things, pull the transactions out, and I think that's a huge advantage. Open banking is a hugely good project that the UK is leading the way on, because we can start using the bank data for the things that are important for our clients, rather than the things that the bank just wants to sell more of, like preventing financial abuse. But we'll need systems to do that.
So if there was an alert through this process, who actually gets that alert then?
So there's going to need to be a safeguarding strategy, and that's going to be set out in the document of creation. So you might say, I want my solicitor to have online access to a system that provides full financial transparency over all of my assets in the event that I lose capacity. And I want accounts produced every month, not every year, because the system can automate it. And I want the solicitor to check those accounts, and I pay the solicitor to do that. I think charging clauses are important. I think actually it is a huge responsibility for a layperson to be an attorney for somebody. And you often find, the will splits the assets 50-50 between the two children. One of them is doing all of the work, caring. Being an attorney, you're a carer. You're vulnerable in yourself. You're probably still trying to get your teenagers to actually go to college. You're trying, talking about bitter experience. You're trying to, caring responsibilities, children, peak career earning. 50, your own financial plans getting knackered because you haven't got time to actually push your own career forwards. Squeeze sandwich generation. These are the people that are the attorneys, and they're being crushed by the administration. They're doing all of this. The will's being split 50-50 with their sibling who's in another country, living the life of Riley, got all the money in the world. You feel very aggrieved, and you start using the funds for your own purposes. That's often the family dynamic that can start, and you can kind of understand why. It's not an irrational way of thinking, but it's legally wrong. So actually putting in charging clauses and saying the person that's doing all of this, actually I want them to be paid this much for that, not the whole house. The good news is, I think the financial services industry is the place, the sector where we reform LPAs, because whilst we're not the ones that are drafting them, we're probably the starting point for almost every referral for an LPA to be created. It's either somebody walks into a bank, no, you can't do that, you'll have to get an LPA, and they then go off and do it online or see a solicitor, or they're talking to their financial planner about it. I think I've got evidence that we have got huge power to change the way these documents are drafted. Wills, we expect a lot of administrative clauses in a will. If you go to a solicitor, pay them £1,000 to produce a will for you, and come back with something that has 3 clauses, you might think, what I paid for. I wanted more than that. I wanted you to cover all the circumstances. I wanted you to provide advice. But we don't have that expectation with LPAs. Almost every LPA I see coming back is a blank document. With one exception. There is, in professionally drafted LPAs, there is nearly always at least one clause that's been inserted. What's the most common clause that you might see in LPAs?
Payment for the professional, I'd imagine.
It's the discretionary fund management clause.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, it's the one about, there was this debate where the OPG actually wrongly suggested that you couldn't, an attorney couldn't delegate the investment function unless it was specifically authorised in the document. All of a sudden, discretionary fund management, can't earn my fees. And lo and behold, almost every document that was ever created professionally after then has a clause in it. It doesn't have safeguarding clauses in it, but it has a clause about the discretionary fund manager getting paid. That, to me, is a good thing, because it shows that we can influence these documents profoundly. So how should we influence them? Well, I think we don't want a little box that says, do you have an LPA? It should say, tell me about the safeguarding strategy that's in your LPA. So these are the sorts of things that these are the sorts of administrative clauses that I might expect. Not in every case, it's going to vary on people's circumstances, but revocation of the previous LPA and the new LPA, stop multiple copies being out there, different powers when people have changed their minds. You can see which one's relevant quickly. Reappointment clauses for joint appointments, order for the replacement to act, confirmation as to how replacements are to act, supervision clauses and safeguarding clauses, placing restrictions over certain transactions, charging clauses, the DFM clause, clauses relating to gift, consultation clauses. If you're making decisions like this, talk to my professional advisors. Notification of third parties, information for attorneys. It's a hugely responsible job. It's a fiduciary responsibility to the donor, but it might be entirely new and novel to people. We can give them useful information and nudge them in the right direction by setting guidance out in the documents. They don't have to be bland, boring forms. What terrifies me quite a lot is there's a huge push from the OPG for online registration, a huge pushback from the legal. But this is where you can set up and create a power of attorney without anyone ever even signing it. This is like open season for financial abuse. This is, I haven't got any money. Mum's got a 500 grand pension pot. Go online, pretend I'm setting up an LPA for her, and then go and raid her pension. And whatever other protections we put around the products, if you've got a registered LPA, that's a legal circumvention of all of those protections. Yeah, I'm the one legally entitled to do this. It gets around all of the other safeguards. So having an effective safeguarding strategy here is fundamental. So what can we do? Practically, we can do things tomorrow. We can review our vulnerable client policies, and we can make sure that we educate ourselves about safeguarding on LPAs. We can use our referral currency with the people that we refer to, the lawyers. So review the professionals that you work with and ask them. A few are brilliant at it, and most are completely ignorant. So we can educate the legal profession by educating our clients and by choosing who we give our referrals to. So when you're choosing your professional partners, ask them about their approach to LPA safeguarding, ask to see examples, ask for flyers that you can give clients to support these conversations. If they're not alive to these issues, don't give them any work. The profession is still, to a large extent, creating LPAs for registration, but we don't want to put clauses in there, it might get rejected. Write your clauses more carefully. That's why we're paying you £1,000. Don't write it for registration, that's a false argument. create a document for use and have a strategy. That's my presentation. Our technology does provides that financial transparency. I don't want to talk too much about that, but if anyone wants to find out, then obviously set up a Zoom call and I'll do a demo of it. Any questions?
So thank you very much indeed. So first of all, let's put our hands together for Seb's presentation. Thank you.